Setting up the mix. So we've consolidated all our tracks, we've got everything ready to go, and at this point we really could start mixing, start adding plugins and start putting processing on the tracks. But what's going to happen is there's a handful of things that you're going to need to do to kind of organize your mix. And if you start mixing now, you're going to have to pause and do some of those organizational tasks. So what we're going to do is we're going to get through all those organizational tasks right at the beginning so everything's ready to go, so we can just jump in there and just fully do all our mixing. One of the other benefits of this is if you're mixing a full album, you can actually make all of your tracks kind of consistent. So it's easy to go from one to the other. Things are going to be in the same place, and it's really going to be easy to jump back and forth. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the order of the tracks. So it's already kind of in order. You can see on the left here we've got our drums, and over on the right we've got our choir, and of course here's our song, the same that we've been working on before. As you can see, it looks familiar. And what I'm going to do is just kind of move around the order of the drums. I want my kick drum to be right next to the bass because I'm going to be working on those two together. And overheads are kind of like the first thing that I look at with the drum. So I'm going to put that all the way to the left. Then we go snare top, snare bottom, hat, and kick. Okay, so that looks good to me. There's our drums all the way to the left in our order. Then we go to the bass, which makes sense to me. They're both together. Then we go to organ. I actually want to go to piano first because in this song, piano is a little bit more prominent than organ. And then right after organ, we go to tenor. Wasn't there there's electric guitar part? Yeah. So we're going to put that guitar right next to the organ. So here's our instruments. And then we kind of move over to vocals. But I want to put our lead vocal right next to that crossover between the instruments and the vocals because it is more prominent than the choir, and so we're going to be working on it more than the choir. And so as we're adjusting things, I want it to be kind of centered in the mix. And then I'm going to take my overhead tracks for my choir and my room mic tracks, and I'm going to put those first, and then we have our individual tenor, alto, and soprano tracks. So there you go. There's the order that we've set up there, and we're going to keep that consistent. Like I said, if you were working on multiple tracks in an album, you'd probably want to find something and stay consistent to it. Now you can set it up however you want. This is just how I decided to do it on this circumstance. You could obviously have the drums to the right and other things to the left, however you want to do. This is just kind of a consistent way that I do some things, but it really depends on what's going to work for you. So the next thing we can notice here is that our session looks a little bland. You've probably noticed that as we've worked with it, and everything's nice and gray. And the reason why I set it up this way is so that when we got to this point, we can kind of color coordinate our tracks. So if we look in their preferences, we'll see that our default track color coding is set to none. So that's why we don't have any colors going on there. And our default region color coding is set to follow the track color. So that's why they're also gray, because they're following the track color, which is set to none. So they're both none. So what's going to happen is if we go and change the color of a track, the regions are going to follow it. So let's go ahead and pull up our color palette, and we're going to select our drums. So click on the overhead track and then shift click on the kick. We've selected all of our drums there, and we're going to go ahead and click on the color that we want to use. So there's red, and if we switch over to our mix window hitting Command equals, you can see this nice bright red over here popping out from the gray. And if we go back to our color palette, you can see that we can adjust kind of the saturation of that, how bright that is. We can also adjust the brightness of our overall mix window and such, and you can see how that adjusts the gray of all the tracks, not just the tracks that have a color assigned to them. So we'll get that where we want it to, and we can obviously come back and adjust that as we go. But I'm going to go ahead and we're going to come back to the edit window and jump down to the choir. So I'll shift click here, and we're going to make the choir more of a blue color. Okay, kind of a lighter blue, and we're going to make our lead vocal kind of a similar color. We'll make it a darker blue, But now we know that anything that's kind of bluish is going to be voice, whether it's lead vocal or the choir tracks. Then we're going to jump to our electric guitar, and we're going to kind of just move this way in the rainbow. So I'm going to make my electric guitar a little bit more greenish and such. And our organ is going to be lighter green. Our piano will be more of a yellow. And then our bass is going to be orange because we're getting really close to kind of the sound of the drums in the rhythm section there. So as you can see, there's our whole array of colors. And the nice thing about this is once you set it up, and especially if you are consistent across multiple mixes you're working on, it's really easy to just go in there and say, okay, I want to find the bass. And boom, you know the bass is orange. You don't have to go looking down here and trying to read your tracks, although that helps as well. But you can kind of navigate a little better, and your mixes look kind of cool, and they're a little easier to work with. So that's a few of the first steps to start setting up your mix.